Hi guys and welcome to the channel. Today we listen to a disturbing, true Reddit story. Sit back, relax, pop on your headphones and enjoy. Story title: Reddit, what's your weirdest internet experience? I'll start. I have been on the web since '96 when I got into the chat room IRC scene in a huge way. I became and still am fascinated by how intimate and intense relationships can become when they are text only. I had and have many friends from those times. We were all experimenting with a new and fantastical media for communicating across the world. One friend called herself Kathy, and we became very close over a number of months. I'm a Brit, she's a Yank, so there was never any likelihood or need for meeting. Our conversations were wide and varied, and I enjoyed her intelligence and wit. We met in a large adult, i.e., not strongly moderated chat room, but it was conversation, not cybersex, which was the main focus of the group. We were part of a larger group of friends who spent a lot of time online. In many ways, the reason I am so fond of Reddit is because there is a similar vibe to that room in those days. Anyway, after about 12 months of chatting, Kathy began to be a bit weird. Not inappropriate exactly, just odd. Difficult to tell when it's text-only communication, but she was a little off. Within a couple of weeks, I had received several emails from her, which were just plain loopy. She hadn't responded to my replies, and when she was online, it was only briefly, and she didn't reply to anyone. Then one day she came online but announced that it wasn't in fact her, but her best friend Brenda using her account, and that Kathy was dead, had killed herself. Over a strange and short conversation in the main room, Brenda told us Kathy had shot herself in the bath the night before, that she had left a note which mentioned me by name and a couple of others in the room. She told us she was using Kathy's PC to let us know. Then she logged off. I was pretty devastated. Remember, this is the early days of the web, at least in the UK, and we were pretty much making up online etiquette as we went along. It was exciting, but I realized risky. Over the next 24 hours, I found myself responding physically and psychologically. I was a psych nurse with psychotherapy training at the time, so I spent a lot of time navel-gazing, as one would if it was a friend or close associate. Shit was, to coin a phrase, real. Then, of course, the real shit went right down the rabbit hole. I went back to the chat room for the support of my online friends. They quickly called me into a smaller private chat room, and the serious weirdness began. One of the guys in the room is a cop. He points out a couple of inconsistencies in Kathy Brenda's story. Firstly, women statistically don't shoot themselves. Apparently, it just doesn't happen. Secondly, if she had shot herself, her house would have been considered a murder scene until proven otherwise, and that Brenda wouldn't have had access to Kathy's PC for a long time, if ever. We realized we had been had, the victims of some strange trick. Nowadays, I'd call it trolling, but it wasn't like that then, or it wasn't for me. I was dumbfounded. My feelings and reactions had been very real, intense, and painful. I wasn't prepared to believe anyone could do such a thing. I know, such a naivete. Over the next few days and weeks, the small subgroup of friends began to investigate Kathy's story. We first of all compared notes. Turns out she had told us very little about herself of any importance. We knew she lived alone in a small town in Wisconsin and that she worked on the front desk of a local paper. The website of the paper, it had one, not everyone did then, made no mention of a death of a staffer or a suicide, nothing in the obituaries either. A friend phoned the paper and asked for her by first name and position, but was clearly fobbed off after a muffled conversation. This friend then drove 100+ miles and turned up at the paper, asked a receptionist about a friend called Kathy who worked there. Remember, we had no idea what she looked like. Only to see the second receptionist run into a back office. We assumed this was Kathy herself. The friend then left as she didn't want to precipitate a crisis. We were convinced, as much as anyone could be, and what we were realizing was a foggy medium, that Kathy was alive, and for some reason we were victims of a cruel trick. What finally convinced me of the weirdness of the situation, and incidentally added a layer to my web-foo self-defense, was that a mod for the IRC channel let us know that Kathy had been logging into the chat room the whole time under other names. Apparently, he could tell by her IP address or something. So this ostensible friend had faked her own death and then had sneaked back to watch her friends grieve. A postscript to the story is that a friend who didn't come online so often later joined the group and told us that Kathy had once confessed to having a drink problem and being very lonely in real life. I was left with an abiding but strong fantasy image of a woman in a dark room, perpetually sipping whiskey, lit only by a harsh monitor watching the effects of her own death play out on a bunch of strangers. Although it is such a long time ago, this is still a very real and strange event in my life. I still struggle to even find an adequate vocabulary for the whole experience. When a group of people from many different locations have a conversation in a chat room, where does the conversation happen? I had a very real, visceral experience of being in a group, but that grouping never occurred. Kathy's death was an emotionally real event in my life, as painful and shocking as the sudden death of a real friend, and the awareness of her deceit came as a betrayal of trust. As William Gibson so rightly said, there is no there. So where did all of this strange Gothic story happen? Although it was painful, then uncomfortable, then enraging, then infuriating, this story, as I experienced its unfolding, has shaped in a very real way my understanding of the internet and my awareness of how much I don't understand. What Kathy did would now be called trolling, and I still don't understand the junkyard dog motivations of people who would do such things. But I am prepared to stay on the web and accept the risk, inevitability really, that one or two will pass my way. So Reddit, what's your weirdest internet story? TLDR, Pilo UK meets lonely woman in chat room. They talk for many hours over a 12-month period. Woman fakes her own death, then logs back in under different accounts to see the reaction. Pilo UK and several others do some investigating and find out they've been had. Thanks to Sports Fan for composing this perfect TLDR. Still don't know what TLDR stands for though. Thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe. All support is much appreciated. Much love, guys.